Well, there you are. The shot that you've just seen with the two balls on the baulk line is in fact the half ball aim, which is a quarter ball contact. Now, the theory is that of course you aim the cue through the centre of the white and pointing the cue at the very edge of the red, and that will achieve the contact that you see in that shot of the half ball aim. Now what I'd like to do is show you the various shots on the table in practice where you can practice this half ball play in red ball play, which is really the essence of being a good cueman and learning how to deliver the cue, because the balls tell you exactly whether you're striking the ball nicely. For instance, if you strike too low, you will tend to get a false angle. You'll square the angle, almost a stun effect. And whereas if you just strike a nice sweet strike centre ball, or marginally above centre, you get the nice flowing action and the forward rotation of the ball, and you get the real clean angle. And this is all about cueing nicely, aiming half ball. So if I can just break this up and show you where these angles are. Well, here's the half ball aim from the centre pocket. There's the line through the centre of the cue ball, aiming the cue at the edge of the red. And there you see the ball coming nicely down the spots, which will leave you either a long loser, and if it continued further, if you desired so, it will bring you down for a middle pocket in off. Now the other shot for the half ball is on the spot again, and here on the knuckle there, same aim exactly as the centre pocket there, and it takes you down for the middle pocket, and then you proceed, if you can, to make as many off the middle bag as you can. And so there you have a middle pocket in off the spot, you have the corner pocket off the spot, and they are the basic in-off angles. Well, now we've had quite a little bit of explanation on the red ball there. Now this is the ultimate of all your practice, really. It's a question of getting down and keeping that red as straight as possible. Nice contact, bringing the red back towards the pocket, and just see how straight you can keep the red. And here's another way of helping yourself to keep that red nice and straight. Put the two target balls on the cushion and play to hit the center between the two. And as you become more proficient, you can narrow the gap. And you'll be surprised how having a target there will help you. And always make sure that you hit through the ball, looking at the object ball when you let go. Well, now, on the tape somewhere, I've played 15 losing hazards off the red into the centre pocket, purely to illustrate the accuracy of striking the red and positioning the white ball, of course. And we can talk about that in a moment or two, but I really want to spend a few minutes on how to tackle the losing hazard game. I mean, I've seen some of the amateur boys playing, and they play the in-offs well, they cue well, but they're a little bit reckless in their attitudes, and they get into trouble before they should. So to start with, we'll start by playing the long loser, which can always be missed. You must remember that. And before we get involved, let me say this, that with the new ball that came in, it may not be new to the younger men, but to me, it was a new ball brought in about 20 years ago, of which I wrote strongish words about at the time, because it was a complete change, and they play quite differently to the old Crystal 8 ball. Well now, these balls, whilst they're beautifully made and perfectly symmetrical and so on, they conform to the limits of about 3 thou in size. There's nothing wrong, but they do tend slightly to vary, and they tend to fly. If you hit them a little bit too hard, they tend to fly, and you don't get the reaction of the nap when the long loser will swerve on the nap and come back onto line. They will tend to get to the peak of the swerve, the cue ball, and instead of coming back swinging nicely back on line, it will tend to go carry on, as it were, and make a bigger arc, thus missing the pocket. Now, to combat that, a lot of players play more gently to leave the red in the area of the pyramid spot. Now, there's nothing wrong in that. In fact, it's quite a good policy. But the only thing is, of course, you don't always want to leave the ball in that area. You might want to fetch it round deliberately so that you can do something else and create a position that you've worked hard for. So you have to find a way of combating. Now, it is very difficult, in my opinion, to, if, for instance, you're playing on a table and you, for whatever reason, whether it's cloth or balls, you find that the balls are throwing wide, and you find it very difficult to judge what you normally play. Well now, if you spot, shall we say, a little wider or a little narrower, it tends to be quite difficult, and you lose a touch of confidence. So what I suggest is that if you find the balls are swinging and not really coming back nicely, you want to play marginally, and when I say marginally, I mean very marginally, narrower. In other words, if you set correctly for the half ball, move the ball, shall we say, 1/4 of an inch, the cue ball, 1/4 of an inch into a slightly narrower angle, and tend to take a breath of check side. into the top pocket. And then you will find that for me anyway, you find that the adjustment is made. And if you practice a few, you'll find it's very, very helpful. And I might add, a lot of players tend to play with check side on long losers because they fear this, but they don't really know why they do it. But that is the reason. It works on the subconscious in the mind and makes you do these things. Now, if you understand that, you can really build your confidence playing the long losers. And of course, when you play the long loser, for instance, if the balls are spotted, which again, without going into details, is a bad rule of billiards. It's too easy to have touching balls and then spot them and get a perfect position, but that's another story. But if the balls are spotted, the object is to get the white ball, the white object ball, to come back and come across the red there. Not the last thing you want is to kiss that red because you don't know where they're going. So when you play your long loser, instead of setting for a perfect half ball, that you can discover, you can measure, you can work out however way you want. Take the ball, as I said, a fraction narrower, and with just a breath of check side, and you'll find it will tend to bring the ball across there. And if I can just illustrate this, I'll show you what I mean. Now, if I place this for the half ball, and I'll try and play this a perfect half ball. Now I came very, very close to the red, too close for comfort. Now, if you watch again, I'll spot exactly the same. There, that's exactly where I spotted before. Now I'm going to come in from there to there. And very often you see a player doing this and just touching the ball, and it's the recognition. So now I've gone a fraction, just a fraction narrower, and I'm taking that ball with a hint of check side. There. Now, as you see, I've missed the red by that much. And there's no fear, plus the fact that because I've got nicely into the white, I've brought it down, now I've got total command where I can push that white and do whatever I like. And, you know, that is very, very important. So that is something for you to work on anyway. Well now, of course that applies, the same applies to the upper pocket, whichever pocket you prefer to play in, of course. So it's the same both sides, which covers the long loser. Now, obviously, when you're playing the open game, you might be playing one or two off the white and incorporating the red ball, playing a bit of red ball play. Very often you come short, whether you're playing around the angles or whatever, and the object ball will land, whether it's red or white, it doesn't make any difference. It'll land in about that position, somewhere between the middle spot and the pink spot, and about 12 or 14 inches from the centre spot. Now, when that happens, there's a great danger, and you're probably aware of this, of getting the 4-shot in the case of the white and the 6-shot with the red, but in either case it disrupts your flow. You've got a foreign shot to play, which of course you want to avoid. Now the thing is, this shot looks ridiculous when you get down to play it, but if you have the courage and the perseverance to practice it, you'll find it's no harder than any other ordinary in-off, and it's this. Now you see the white ball or the red have come round beautifully for the middle pocket, and what a lovely feeling when you think well, here we are again, lovely in middle pocket in-off, and you just keep driving, you know, and that is the feeling. It gives you confidence, and it's that odd shot when you do it right that gives you the spur to keep going, and that is so important. Well, now we've spoken about the ball, object ball, being between the pyramid spot and the centre spot. Well, now again, if you're playing, in this case particularly, red ball play, and so often this will happen to you, the red will come down, and if it comes to there, perfect. You've got a middle pocket in-off in either middle pocket. So you're laughing. But strange tables, slow, fast, whatever, you find that suddenly a little bit of tension creeps in and you come back a bit short. And you've then got the dreaded, and I mean dreaded, I think all players hate it, is the long loser, where this distance here from the cue ball to the object ball is shorter than the distance it has to travel from the object ball to the pocket. So therefore, there is a certain judgment required where you've suddenly got a different ratio between cue ball and object ball and pocket. Now, when you've been in flow and you're cueing nicely, you're pushing through, you suddenly get landed with this one, and because you're feeling good, you're feeling confident, you get down, you set up the angle correctly, and you swing nicely through the shot, imagining that the red is going to come nicely round here somewhere and land in the middle of the table, and lo and behold, you wriggle in the jaw, the ball has swung wide out here, and instead of coming nicely back to the pocket, it catches there, because the swing has been lengthened, because you've played at a nice firm pace. So the motto is, unless you're very, very good at it and you're totally competent, is to play it gently. In other words, allow the knack to work. So when you get down and play this shot, and there's the spot, instead of playing the shot and giving it a whack to fetch it round, play it nice and sweet and play it gently, and there you've got a lovely in-off into the corner pocket. Now you'll find once a little bit of practice of that, and you'll begin to feel, because you're playing gently, there isn't the vigor in your action, where you tend to get slight movement off the line of the cue and so on. You're able to play, in other words, the technique that you possess to greater perfection, and you'll find that is the best way to play that, until the time comes when maybe you're that good that you can swing through. But you know, the reason we're going into this is that it's these balls, which I said, we're not complaining about the balls in as much as there's anything wrong with them. It's just that they're different. And I don't want to get embroiled in discussion about the balls, but the fact is that these balls are lighter than the old ball used to be. And it's something like 1/4 of an ounce, which is considerable. And in my view, they spring and they do fly. And as a consequence, you have to play more gently with greater care. Now, some people will say, well, you know, it's made the game harder. For billiard players, it has. And for snooker players, what it has done, because they have become aware of the dangers of using side, where because the ball is lighter and it flies, the snooker players have become far more expert at striking that ball in the centre. And as I've said so many times, the most difficult thing to do is to hit that ball in the centre. And why? Because there is only one. Anywhere else is wrong in terms of perfection. So you see, the snooker players have learned to strike the ball in the centre, and as a consequence the potting has improved. There's no question about that. But for the billiard player, side is absolutely essential if you're going to be a quality player. So you have to learn how much you as an individual push that ball offline when you play and see the curvature take place to come back on the line. And whereas I may have less swing or more swing than another player, at least I've learned how much I move the ball. And these are the sort of things that grow on you if you understand what you're trying to do. For instance, if you're playing with strong running side, you might find if you're playing with strong running side up the table, and it's right-hand side, for instance, you hit the ball, a nice firm shot, it pushes slightly to the left, and if you stay still on the shot and you watch exactly the ball travelling to the object, you will see the very slight push off and it comes back on the line, gets to the object, and then does whatever you want it to do. Now, if you misjudge the amount of side or push a little too hard, you snatch a little or whatever, all that has an effect on the line of aim. But if you were able to draw the line of aim from A to B in a dead straight line, which the snooker players tend to do, you would find that it's easier to play that way, but you have to be very good at hitting the ball in the centre. Now at billiards, you have to use side very often because the shot isn't on without side. So you have to learn your ability to move the cue ball before it gets onto the line. So the line of aim, whilst it doesn't change if it's purely straight, you have to allow for that little bit of curve which comes and fetches that ball back to where it would go along the straight line. I hope I make that clear, but it is, I know it sounds all hypothetical, theoretical and all the rest of it, but if you understand what you are doing and what happens on the table, when you practice you can put it right. And I think I've demonstrated in one or two places where you can actually do that. So try it, see what happens, and I wish you success.